If Christmas doesn't get you nostalgic for old machines, then I don't know what will. Hello cave dwellers, welcome into the cave. Yes, it's the time of year where I get extra misty-eyed as if I'm not nostalgic for these machines all year round. There's something about Christmas that makes it really special. Perhaps it's because of the memories of family ignored while they're all busying themselves around me, and I'm completely anti-socially playing on video games as a child. Yes, we've all got those stories, I know. Taking computers down to big telly and consoles down to big telly in the lounge, being allowed to get away with it because it's Christmas time. Lots of wonderful memories. And for me, this memory here is a really special one because this is a photo of the actual machine. I have shown it on the channel before, I think, that I got in Christmas. I think it was 1986. On the lacy tablecloth with the velvet curtains behind it. That was my Amstrad CPC. That was the spark that ignited my passion for computing. It launched my career eventually. A career that I then gave up to open a museum to celebrate all of these machines. That is the cause of everything. So thanks, Dad, for that. And it was a machine of firsts. It was the first machine that I bought games for. It was the first machine that I went out and sought magazines for and typed in the listings in the magazines and pored over the reviews before deciding what game to buy next. And it was the first machine that I had compilations of games on. And a compilation is in fact the first thing I owned for it because it came with the machine. This is the Amsoft pack that you got with the CPC464 when you bought it. Software with a value of over £100 and free when you purchase the CPC464. I would have ripped this open on that Christmas morning and loaded each and every tape, and it would have got me through the week until the shops were open again and I had some money to go out and buy some other games. And I've been trying to get hold of this for years. I've been watching it on eBay. There have been just stagnant listings on eBay. There was one for £310 for just years and years on eBay. And just this last month, this came up for sale. I put in a bid of £40 expecting not to get it, and nobody else bid. The clock ticked down, and then I got the email to say, bang, you've won it. And I was over the moon, especially with Christmas approaching. I knew that I was going to really enjoy this. So I want to go through it with you today. I want to check out all the games, try and remember the ones that I can. I'm pretty sure Roland on the Ropes is the first game I ever loaded. Harrier Attack was a great one as well. And we'll rate them somehow. We'll rate them on how good the game is and my personal nostalgia value. We'll have a little think about that. But I hope they're in there because I've just turned the camera on. I haven't actually opened it yet. So let's check the tapes are in there and let's learn all about the Amsoft pack. Codename Soft999. Let's bring it over to the table here then. Soft999 is the code name of the pack on the back, the Amsoft 12 pack. And you can see each game that came out had a soft code. So Easy Amsword, it's not a game, it's an application, was Soft154. Anyway, I'm desperate to rip this open. And I'm nostalgic for the tape covers on here, not so much this package itself, because I would have just torn it, thrown it in the bin and never seen this packaging again. So it's a wonder that it actually survived all these years. Let's take the end and cross our fingers. See what comes out. Oh, there's Roland. I think that might have to be the first one that we load today as well. They all look to be in pretty good condition. There we go, that was a bit of a struggle to get them out, but these are in mint condition. These cases, it's as if they've never been used, and they look as nice on the inside as they do on the outside, with the exception of Fruit Machine that's just got a little bit of a crack on the case, but I'm not sure these have ever been used. This is probably as new as the day I opened them back in 1986. So what games have we got here then? Well, we've got Roland on the Ropes. Roland famously named after Roland Perry, who worked at Amstrad, who designed the architecture of the CPC464. He became a mascot. So we've got Roland on the Ropes and Roland in the Caves. Both rebranded, ported games from other systems. So Roland on the Ropes was known as Fred in another series, and Roland in the Caves I think was Bugaboo the Flea. So they've just rebranded it and got it out for the Amstrad CPC. Timeman One, learning how to tell the time and set the clock. Don't remember running that one. Bridget, I do remember, awful game. And in fact, to justify this software over £100 value on here, I have got a retail copy of Bridget over here somewhere. Here it is. And the label on here says Ellis Marketing Hi-Fi Centres, £7.95 you would have paid for that. Because when this came out, this was in the era just before budget games, before the £1.99, £2.99 games. This is when you were paying £7.95 for a game. On a ZX Spectrum, probably something more like £4.95, £5.95. So that was a little bit expensive. But in the case of Bridget, which is a terrible game, as we'll find out later, absolutely extortionate. Don't pay £8 for Bridget, please. Oh Mummy, Harrier Attack, which is a scramble clone. Loved that, and I'm looking forward to revisiting that. The Galactic Plague, Xanagrams, some kind of hangman game, and Fruit Machine, which I remember being quite addictive. Exactly what you want a kid under 10 years old to be playing and getting hooked on. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral. I'm going to say nothing about that because it's a special one. Sultan's Maze. Can't remember playing that one, so I'm looking forward to jogging the old grey matter on that. So that's the selection I was faced with on Christmas morning. What do I play first? What would you play first? I'm pretty sure it was Roland on the Ropes, as I said, that I picked out first, probably followed by Harrier Attack. So we could start with those two. And well, let's open some of these up to have a look inside. And sure enough, it's on the red bit of tape. So either that's been rewound or it has never been played. And I'm going to hazard a guess that these have never been used. I'm really impressed with this for £40. I'm pretty sure I've got some games that have never ever been used. Yeah, the same with Harrier Attack. It's at the start of the tape. Obviously, that's not a guarantee that it's never been used. Someone just might have been good at rewinding tapes. But they all look so clean and so nice. Bridget's at the start of the tape. One more. Oh Mummy. Back at the start of the tape. I don't think these have ever been played, and I'm not seeing any mold or any problems with the tapes visually. So I think we've got a good chance of these loading up, because tape is pretty hardy compared to 3.5-inch discs, for example. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to get some of these working, if not all. So let's start where I would have started on Christmas morning 1986, with Roland on the Ropes. Ah, the sweet sound of a cassette loading on the built-in tape deck of the CPC. Nostalgic for some, fingernails on a blackboard for others. And here is Roland on the Ropes, developed by Spanish company Indiscomp in the same year that the CPC was released, 1984, but the game did first appear in '83 on the ZX Spectrum, where it was simply called Fred. And it was later re-released in Spain as Sigarat, which comes from an ancient Assyrian word meaning height or pinnacle, and was used to describe a large multi-level temple built in ancient times. Very fitting then, because that's exactly where Roland is, in a temple, with the goal being to reach the top while collecting treasure and avoiding enemies in the form of ghosts, mummies, and the terrifying pink hedgehog. It's a simple maze game with clunky four-way scrolling and flickering sprites, all the hallmarks of a quickly knocked together game to meet a deadline. As an introduction to computers for younger me, because that's exactly what this was as the first game that I loaded up, it felt chunky, it felt colourful. The maze was randomised, which gave a certain replay value to the game, but it could feel very frustrating and unfair when you got tangled up, especially when you got caught up with an enemy who was moving in the same direction as you and at the same speed, and they just sapped away all your health in one go. I hated when that happened. I'd love to fire this game up for a few minutes to remember that time, that Christmas, those memories, where I was, what I was doing. So of course it scores 10 out of 10 nostalgia biscuits. But as a game, I think only 5 out of 10 Lara Crofts is a fair score. With the 1982 Falklands War fresh in our minds, the idea of piloting a Harrier jump jet from an aircraft carrier was appealing. And that's what Harrier Attack by Jarrell Software promised. Your aircraft carrier comes into view, and as soon as it lets rip... The game had 5 difficulty levels, and it gets up enough speed to feel pretty arcadey. Like all the games in the pack, I would come to learn that the CPC was capable of much greater graphical detail, much better games, but this pack set the bar for me, and that did mean that I had a lot of pleasant surprises along the way as that bar was raised, as the system's lifetime continued, and in the modern day with modern indie projects that continue to push the CPC. This was just the beginning. The original game was written for the 16K version of the ZX Spectrum and the Auric One, and there's very little to suggest that very much has been added at all, if anything, to take account of the CPC's 64K. There may also have been a Harrier Attack 2 23 years later when Jarrell Games was formed again by Mike Richardson, former director of the original company. I can see screenshots of Harrier Attack 2, but I can find no evidence that it was actually released, or perhaps it was just such a flop that there's no trace of it. For Harrier Attack then, a solid 9 out of 10 custard creams. I definitely played this a lot more than Roland on the ropes, but only one game can be my first, and that was Roland. As a game in its own right, Harrier Attack scores a generous, I think, 6 Thatchers. Next up is AVM, which sounds a lot cooler than Animal, Vegetable, Mineral. Would you believe me if I said it was a first-person shooter? No, it's not. It's an educational title in which you think of an animal, vegetable or mineral, and the CPC will read your mind. It does this through a series of questions such as, has it got 4 legs? And eventually it will have a guess. There's just one flaw with this whole thing. It only notes 2 of each thing. It only notes 2 animals, 2 minerals and 2 vegetables. It's all a trick. The game is actually to teach you about databases and data retrieval. Through using it, you build up a library of questions and answers, and then it uses your database that you've built up to follow a decision tree, which becomes more complex over time. We saw similar software on things like the Acorn Electron at the time. Now, I can appreciate the goal of this edutainment title. It would have reassured the parents that it wasn't all blasting aliens' guts on my computer. But I got enough of this type of program on the BBC Micro at school, and titles like, Mallory Manor is the first one I can think of, where you would edit the names of the suspects in the game and the rooms, name them to your classmates if you like, and then you would play them. Data is cool. Changing data is cool. But alien guts are cooler. Just 2 nostalgia Garibaldis for this one, and a single turnip, I'm afraid. Hello. Sorry to all my old teachers, except for you, Mr. Potter. You were a... Roland's back, and this time he's in the caves. In the cave. Another Indiscomp developed game, and it seems to really divide opinion, this one, on those who can remember it. I think it's best described as the Flappy Bird of its day. And not because there's a pterodactyl trying to eat your face. No, it's because it has a very simple control system and basic physics. And you can, with practice, get better at this game, but it takes some patience and it takes some doing. You've only got 2 keys in the game, left and right. Hold down one to charge up the leaping power and then release it to jump, and that's it. That's all there is to it. You need to find your way to the top of the cave network while avoiding obstacles, which the plot describes as flesh-eating plants on a mysterious planet named Ivorus, on which you've developed amazing flea-like jumping powers when you mutated into the alien being's form. Also, you arrived here by a time machine, and the year is 2464 AD. It's a lot of words to say. This was a ZX Spectrum game named Bugaboo the Flea, and it was ported to the Amstrad and had Roland slapped on it. The original is reportedly one of the first games made in Spain, and it was very well received, scoring 92% in Crash Magazine for Spectrum owners. And as a standalone game, it reached number 4 in the Amstrad charts. Now, I'm on the side of the fence where I get really hooked on this game, and I really like that it tries to be something different. It's not just another maze game or a clone of an arcade. It's something that feels fresher. It's the palate cleanser of the Amsoft pack. And depending on your palate, you may want to spit it out or you may enjoy it. And I think I enjoy it a little bit more now in the modern day than I did as a kid, because I got very quickly frustrated with it back then, but I seem to have developed a bit more patience with it now. I like it. 8 fondant fancies from me on the nostalgia scale and 8 Rolands for gameplay. What's this? Oh, it's a maze game. Yes, Sultan's Maze has an arduous loading time of around 17 minutes. And so far, all these tapes have actually loaded first time, which I'm impressed with. So 17 minutes, what would I have done with them? That was 17 minutes of magazine reading, raiding the fridge to make a triple-decker sandwich with whatever I could find in there, and maybe poking wrapped Christmas presents under the tree to guess what they were. When the game does eventually load, and I'm sure it's not the only one in the pack, but this one is clearly written in BASIC and it shows. Your task is to navigate the 3D maze from a first-person perspective, avoiding the ghosts and collecting the rubies. It's reminiscent of 3D Monster Maze, which we saw on the Sinclair ZX81 back in 1981, and that was the original Survivor horror game, some would argue. Each movement in the maze uses up energy, which you can recharge by returning to the entrance. So you need to enter, navigate the maze, collect the rubies, get them back, and you do this multiple times, or you'll just die of exhaustion. Maybe in the game, maybe in real life, who knows. You can also ignore the maze completely and just part the bushes to walk through them. It's a tough game made tougher by the slow redraw times because of the use of BASIC in making it, rather than optimizing it with machine code. I would liken it to playing Doom if Doom used the leaderboard golf engine to draw the screen. I probably played it once, got bored of waiting for it to load, and went right back to Harrier Attack. And it's for that reason I can only award it 3 Sultanas and a couple of lost Spooky Dokies. Not memorable at all. But wait, it gets worse, a lot worse. If you want to strike fear into the hearts of any Amstrad CPC owner, then just wave a copy of Bridget at them. Developed by Epic Soft as a method of torture for captured spies, while listening to Jingle Bells and Colonel Bogey over and over again. Yes. Stick folk charge out of the building at the top left and must traverse 4 bridges to reach the purple house at the bottom right. Each bridge is assigned a joystick direction, and you have to flap the bridge, flappy bridges, up and down at the right time, and that's it, that's the game. And here's the stupid thing. I remember playing it quite a lot. What was wrong with me? Maybe there's a subliminal message buried in there that brainwashes you into playing it. Maybe it was a punishment that my parents inflicted on me. That's it, Neil. Your behaviour has been terrible today. Go and play Bridget for 30 minutes with the music on. And don't come out until we tell you to. I rate this game 10 Jeffs and 10 Zellwegers. Gaming perfection. Wait, what? Bridget is so powerful that it tried to prevent the next game from loading. Xanagrams from Dean Software threw up a read error while trying to load, but it was quickly resolved by flipping the tape over and trying again. And we find ourselves here in a very simple crossword style game that probably feels more current than it otherwise would because of things like Wordle. You can use the cursor keys to navigate the cells and fill out the letters using available tiles on the right. The fewer guesses you take, the higher you score. It was entertaining in just the same way a quick blast of Solitaire or Minesweeper are entertaining on a PC. And the range of words was great, actually. I really enjoyed it, especially on the difficult setting. There can't be too many gripes about such a simple game, but my main one is that it's limited to a maximum of 5 words on the screen. I want to play this with 20 or 30 words. That would make for a really good game. I'd have classed this as leaning a little bit too far into educational territory as a kid for it to really have held my interest, but I would have given it a good go. The game was also released on the Electron, BBC Micro, C64 Spectrum and Sharp MZ of all systems, and it has a legacy. You can visit, right now, today, Xanagrams.com, where Peter Noblet, the original author of the game, has made a web version. He's registered the company Xanagrams, and it's also a registered trademark, so it is still going strong. Who knew? No wonder Bridget got jealous. 1 Jammy Dodger for nostalgia, and I think 5 Twiglets for this one. We're halfway through the pack now, and what could be more wholesome to a child than encouraging them to have their 5 a day with Fruit Machine by Paul Aitman. Yes, get your kids hooked on gambling. You start out with £5 and spin the Fruit Machine, and it's a pretty basic machine. It can hold a reel, nudge, you can gamble your winnings to increase your earnings, and that's about it really. There's not a great deal to say about this as it's so simple. There would be much better Fruit Machine games released for the platform, such as Codemaster's Fruit Machine Simulator in 1987. But for me, there was a certain level of naughtiness about being able to play the machine you weren't allowed to touch in the pub. And I might even attribute playing this and similar games enough as a kid to recognise how the odds are so stacked against you, so much so that it's not really worth bothering with touching the real things. So thank you, Paul Aitman, you probably saved me a lot of money in the long term. It seems Paul went on to code a typing tutor program named The Key Factor, and neither of his games managed to achieve a 40% or higher score in the gaming magazines of the time. So I'll be kind to Paul. I'll give it 4 cherries out of 10 for nostalgia because of the forbidden factor, the forbidden fruit, and 2 bandits for the gameplay. Things get more fun now, thankfully, with Oh Mummy from Gem Software. The systems this was released on includes the CPC, MSX, Spectrum, Tatung Einstein, and the Computers Lynx, just when you thought the Auric One was the most unusual system you'd hear about today. It also got unofficial ports to the Mega Drive and Intellivision. The inspiration here is clearly Amidar, a kind of drawing game where you have to draw around boxes to unlock them. In this case, it's done by leaving a trail of footprints around the screen, and you have to avoid the mummies while you do it. Uncover the key and tombstone and you've unlocked the level, and you can walk through to the next one where the speed of the game increases and the mummies follow you and the number of mummies chasing you increases, and it just gets harder. And on the hardest setting, it does show how quickly the CPC can run a nice, simple, single-screen arcade game with none of the sprites flickering as we saw in Roland on the Ropes. This game does its job very well. The game was also bundled with some ZX Spectrum packages, the great rival to the Amstrad CPC, and the Amstrad version, I have to say, looks so much better. And it was nice to have that one over on my specky owning friend around the corner to say, look, this is clearly better. There's nothing amazingly original here, and it was quickly forgotten once I bought games like Dizzy, but it still deserves 5 pyramids for nostalgia, and I think 5 more for the game itself. This would have kept me entertained in my room while I avoided the whiskery kisses of my gran on Boxing Day. What's worse than a Space Invader? A Galactic Plague, of course, and it is worse, much worse than Space Invaders. Playing and looking like a basic typing program from a magazine, it's a far cry from the 5-year-old arcade it was based on, or even the slightly more advanced Galaxian. It's the game in the pack which is trying its absolute hardest to be an all-out arcade game, and it doesn't do the CPC justice at all. It's actually written by the same programmer as Roland in the Caves, one Paco Suarez, but I have a feeling he was just phoning it in with this one. Maybe he did it on his lunch break just to hit the quota that he had to hit. But that's okay, because I discovered something odd while I was revisiting this. You see, if I hold down button 2 on a 2-button joystick and left at the same time, it simply completes the level. It awards me the bonus points as if I've cleared the wave and moves on to the next level. I am now an expert at this game, and I'm pretty sure it just goes on forever and ever, because after about 5 or 10 minutes of skipping levels, it was still going. No nostalgia from me on this one, I'm afraid, so it gets 1 Alan and 1 Plague Rat from space. Amstrad Action rated it 29% in their first issue, so it seems I'm not alone, it's just that bad. And that leaves us now with just 2 more cassettes, which aren't really games, so I'll cover those quickly now. The first is Timeman One, which should not be confused with Minuteman. One is an edutainment title, which teaches us how to tell the time. The other is an intercontinental ballistic missile. Only one of the 2 was in the Amsoft pack, much to my disappointment. And the other is Amsword, that's a word processor, which I did find interesting because it showed me a serious side to computing that wasn't trying to educate me. I actually had my gran's old typewriter for some reason at the time, and I enjoyed tapping silly stories out on it when the arms in the typewriter weren't getting stuck on one another. And between this at home and a program which I think was called WordWise on the BBC Micro at school, I got quite into word processing, or at least I got word processing. I got what it was, I got the advantages of it, and that in turn would lead to me embracing spreadsheets and just the natural adoption of productivity apps. So this was my gateway into that side of things. Of course it sat in the bottom of the drawer because I was more interested in games. Who was I writing letters to at that age? But where I laughed off Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, I kind of respected this one. It's a hard one to rate, so I'll award it a bag of cave Christmas tree decorations, available now at rmcretro.store. Excuse me, don't know what came over me there. So what can we conclude from our journey through this pack? Well, we can conclude that it's not worth £40 to anyone that doesn't have those nostalgic memories like I did. To me, it's well worth £40. I love looking at this. I'm going to shrink wrap it. I'm going to put it on display with the Amstrads here in the museum. And every time I walk past it, I'll be reminded of that Christmas and all the great memories. If you don't have those memories, it's a very average pack. There are some good games in there. My standout games, definitely Roland in the Caves and Harrier Attack. And of course, Bridget. No, not Bridget at all. Not Bridget. That can get straight in the bin. Harrier Attack, Roland in the Caves. I'll continue to play them regularly. Roland in the Caves loading up here. And I'll probably put that on for this weekend for the visitors here at the museum. Beyond that, well, it was my introduction, but very quickly I was out buying games like Kickstart 2 with the course designer, Way of the Exploding Fist. That was out and reviewed in issue 1 of Amstrad Action magazine. So that would have been out when I had my Amstrad. Pajama Rama and Werewolves in London, which is actually a flippy tape. This was a slightly later game which had the Spectrum game on one side and the Amstrad on the other. There were so many better games out there for my Amstrad CPC. So before long, most of these, from memory, with the exception of Harrier Attack, which I would revisit lots, would just have gone in the drawer. But they stayed there. I didn't trade them. I didn't sell them. They stayed with my Amstrad CPC for its life until I sold it to my next door neighbour for, I think it was £100 maybe, that I sold my CPC for, and then bought the Amiga 500 with that money, or put that money towards it. It's been lovely to get into the Christmas spirit, and it's past the time this week while I've been waiting for RAM chips and sockets to arrive to get that Mega PC fixed, if you've been following that series. I hope some of you will come and try this out for yourselves and share your memories of the Amsoft pack or other games that you had on your Amstrad. Head to retrocollective.co.uk if you'd like to come and pay us a visit, book a ticket to visit, especially over the Christmas period when we'll have the decorations up and the mulled wine on the go, or at least the alcohol-free mulled wine wafting around, and the mince pies. It's going to be a really nice December here. And if you can't make it, I'll try and share as much of that as possible in the videos. And if you'd like to support what we do here, head to patreon.com/RMC Retro. See you in the next video. Thank you for enjoying and suffering these games with me today, and take care. Bye-bye.